Welcome back to another episode of the Benefits Insider. I'm your host, Chris Hamilton, and today I want to share with you thoughts on vertical integration, on how it can help or hurt our businesses when trying to address the rising costs of health insurance to drive more profitability for our businesses and better coverage for our employees. If you want to use your benefits to attract or retain talent, you have to offer something they can't get anywhere else. So one of the companies that I've been a big fan of is Amazon, and not particularly for what they're doing in healthcare, although that could be a masterclass of what they're doing. I'm particularly interested in their vertical integration strategy on the business side and how they've been able to use it to create competitive advantages and manage costs to do more for their customers. And then we can talk about how health insurance has worked when it pertains to vertical integration and what they're doing. And the difference in the two is really the secret behind fixing rising costs in our businesses for health insurance and how to provide more to our employees for less. So what is Amazon known for? Their shipping. And when you look back several years ago, they relied on companies like UPS and FedEx. But I think when the folks at Amazon looked at that situation, one, shipping is vitally important to their business because they don't own any brick and mortar stores. People can't walk in and buy something. They're reliant on shippers to get the goods to people's houses, right? Well, costs can be pretty volatile when it comes to shipping. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but fuel costs and labor shortages and all sorts of things. And so because that's a very critical component of their business, there was an advantage to them actually owning some of that distribution. So what did they do? They created a shipping arm of their business, and it did a couple things for them. It gave them direct oversight and management of something that was critically important to them, not only being able to get a package to your door in 2 days, but in a lot of cases getting same day. I mean, look around town today, you can see these trucks zipping around 24/7, it seems. But the other thing that it allowed them to do, if you think about this, I went back and looked at UPS's profit margins over the last, call it 14 years, and it averages about 12 to 13%. So by simply, this is an operating margin. So by Amazon being able to create their own shipping fleet and managing that process, essentially they've been able to remove that 13% operating profit that UPS was making. And so their cost, just by removing that profit margin, they could their own internal cost of doing it, essentially, all things being equal, is about 12 to 15% less than using UPS or FedEx for that example. But what has that allowed them to do? Well, it allowed them to continue offering free prime shipping, which is a critically important competitive advantage that they have versus brick and mortar. So what has that allowed Amazon to do? One, it allowed them to take control of a very large and critical expense that they have that could possibly threaten their existence and their competitive advantage if they didn't. By removing those profit margins of the vendors they were using, it allowed them to offer more for less. They now offer free shipping on all of their prime goods, and additionally, they've been able to expand that, basically enhancing the service to same-day shipping for a lot of things that you buy on their site. So there's been a huge enhancement to the customers by their vertical integration into shipping. So how does this relate to your health insurance? When you look at the health insurance landscape, a lot of the carriers, they've been on this vertical integration, this acquisition strategy for years, gobbling up just about anything they can get their hands on, from physician groups, clinics in some facilities, pharmacy benefit managers, otherwise known as PBMs. When you look at what these insurance companies actually own, it's not just insurance. In fact, most of their revenue and a huge chunk of their profitability, in some cases most of their profitability, comes from things unrelated to insurance. Insurance is just the mechanism they use to have these subsidiaries they own to generate the profit. So how does that actually work? I'm going to pick on two of the big carriers today. And this slide that I'm going to show on screen here is revenue numbers through 2022 for both Cigna and United Healthcare. But the thing that I want you to point out here that I've highlighted is these two units. The first one for Cigna is Evernorth. You can see the amount of revenue that comes from that organization related to the entire total. In fact, it's about 78%. Now, these numbers are a little bit dated. The full year 23 numbers aren't available yet. So essentially at that point in time, 78% of their revenue came from something other than insurance. And what's involved in Evernorth, there's a lot of things that are tied into that, but the largest component of that is a PBM, or a pharmacy benefit manager, called Express Scripts. It's the nation's largest pharmacy benefit manager. And the thing to understand about pharmacy benefit managers, and this is important to know if you're trying to lower the rising costs of health insurance in your business, is a pharmacy benefit manager simply sets the contracted price that your members will pay for medications when they get prescriptions at a pharmacy. They don't manufacture medications. They don't distribute them. They do no research and development. It's simply a middleman helping set the price of medications at pharmacies. And what's interesting about that, when you look further down below at United Healthcare here, they've got this unit called Optum. And you can see that unit comprises of clinicians. In fact, United Healthcare is the largest employer of physicians nationally. At the time I'm recording this, they've got close to 80,000 physicians owned. But the biggest component of that also is their pharmacy benefit management group. It drives a very significant portion of their profitability. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Look at Amazon, for example, right? They were able to vertically integrate and generate cost reductions, and were able to pass that on to their customers in the form of lower costs, free shipping. What are the insurance companies doing? How is this impacting their customer base? When I look at this, and I meet with lots of employers every single year, when we look at their renewals, on average, most of us are paying more. So ask yourself, with your last renewal or your last three, what were your costs doing? Were they going up or they were going down? If you're like most employers that we work with or that we talk to, your costs are going up, and in some cases pretty dramatically. When you look at these companies' profitability, in particular, you look at their share prices, which I'll share this right now. These carriers, they're vastly outperforming the S&P 500, and they have for years, primarily on the back of this strategy, right? There's not as much competition when it comes to insurance. Only a few of them out there. So they've got kind of this oligopoly, if you will. In some markets, it's a monopoly. They have pricing power, and they're controlling so many pieces of your healthcare journey that they profit from, that it's driving their earnings, and they're not passing it back to us in the form of lower costs. It's being retained, that value is being retained by shareholders. So what's the solution? The biggest thing that I always talk about, whether you're talking about a business strategy, whether you're talking about looking at working with a vendor, whether you're talking about hiring people, somebody to do something for you, it's critically important to understand how people make money. Whether it's your broker, whether it's your insurance company, whether it's the hospital. How are people making money? And the most important reason is it drives their behavior. It incentivizes them. It's exactly why if you have salespeople on staff, you pay them commission instead of just a flat salary. You want them to have the incentive to do that thing that you want them to do, which is to sell more, right? Well, the number one thing is to understand how these insurance carriers make money. And once you understand that, then you can decide, does this fit my goal and objective? Do I need to make a change? And so the biggest thing that we're doing with our clients today is we're removing the pharmacy benefit management component from the carrier. We're using independent pharmacy benefit managers that don't make money off the medications the way these big carriers do. And I'm going to give you two big ways they make money real quick. These are simple to understand. The number one way that these pharmacy benefit managers profit from your rising healthcare costs, when specifically pertaining to your pharmacy spend, your medications, is what's called spread pricing. And I'm just going to use round numbers here, but somebody walks in, you walk into a pharmacy and you pick up a medication. The pharmacy charges you $50 for that medication, but the pharmacy's only keeping $30. Well, where does that other $20 go? It goes back to the PBM. They add in costs. They're embedding costs in that medication that goes back to line their pockets. The second one, especially with an election cycle coming up, is in the last two cycles have been talking about pharmaceutical rebates. A lot of the manufacturers that manufacture these drugs, they pay rebates to your insurance carrier to get preferential treatment to have their medication be one of the preferred medicines. So it's almost like when you walk into a grocery store, a lot of these food manufacturers, they pay a premium to be on a certain level shelf. Well, it's exactly what these drug manufacturers are doing. They're paying extra money to your insurance carrier to get preferential treatment. So it's money that's paid behind the scenes. And depending on your arrangement, whether you're fully insured, and even some of these cases, self-funded clients that are with a carrier PBM, they're not getting all of these rebates. If you're fully insured, you get none of it. If you're self-insured, but you're still using one of their PBMs, we find many times you're not getting the full rebate back. They're retaining a portion of that. The third component to this, though, is those big PBMs don't give you the cost management tools to help lower the cost of prescriptions, because that eats into their profit margin. It eats into their rebates. A handful of really important ones that we see is patient assistance programs out there from the drug manufacturers to cover the cost of these medications for certain income threshold. Folks that work in your company that make below a certain income. The big pharmacy benefit managers won't let you do that, because if the manufacturer is giving the medication away for free, there's one, no spread pricing, and two, there's no rebate. They won't allow you to do that. And if you want to know, I always play this game. When you're watching the Super Bowl coming up, or you're watching some of the big sporting events, you'll see these drugs being advertised on television. Number one, if a drug's advertised on television, it isn't cheap. That's expensive real estate to advertise your medication. But typically at the end of that conversation, you'll either see it in fine print along the bottom, or you'll hear somebody will come on. If you're unable to afford your medication, contact us. We may be able to help. That is patient assistance. But what's interesting is if you have a commercial insurance plan with one of these big pharmacy benefit managers, you won't qualify for it. So by moving to an independent pharmacy benefit manager that doesn't profit off of spread, and they're passing those rebates on to you, they also allow you to do some of these neat programs that help your employees get access to those really expensive medications at a reduced or even no cost to the member. They're working in your best interest, not theirs. So what's the impact to your business of making a change like this? Well, maybe you're a contractor, or you're an auto dealer, or you're an accounting firm. What do those three industries, very different industries, have in common? Well, they all employ people. They have labor costs. And if you think about it, when you're doing activity-based costing, or you're trying to figure out what are my costs, how do I make profit, what do I need to charge, typically those labor costs are factored into that. So I'll give you an example of a contractor. I've got several contractors who, when they're figuring out how do they bid for these jobs, they're taking not only the man hours and their labor rate, but they're factoring in insurance costs, health insurance costs. So it goes into their bids. Think about two contractors. Contractor A, they've got a 20% increase in their health insurance costs, right? So they're up here, their costs are here. But then you got contractor B, who had a 20% decrease in their health insurance costs. When those two contractors are competing against each other on a bid basis for a job, which of those two do you think is going to have a competitive advantage to be able to bid a job where they're able to make a profit? Maybe they're both able to bid the job at the same rate, but one of them is going to make more than the other because their cost basis is going to be lower. That's the real opportunity here. This is why I'm very passionate about being able to solve this particular problem, because it's a way that you can give your employees the same. In most cases, we're enhancing the benefits, but giving it to your employees for less, driving more profitability for your business. And it's not just about profitability for the sake of profitability. What does that profitability really mean? To me, when I think about it as running a business, it's stability for the company. It's the ability to reinvest money in areas that I otherwise wouldn't have. I had a client that saved $1 million in 1 year. That $1 million represented pay raises for employees, investment in technology, and being able to buy equipment that they needed, that otherwise that $1 million would have just been given in to an inefficient system. They would have given it back to an insurance carrier, but it was money they were able to retain and use for the betterment of their business and their employees. That's what's at stake here. Not just in year one, when you think about, okay, I can save $1 million in a year, or maybe it's $100,000, but what does that delta look like over time? It grows. And so it's important to think about the decisions that we make today as opposed to playing checkers, which is what's the lowest rate I can get today. You really should be thinking about okay, the move that I make today, how does that set me up for the next 2, 4, 6 years or 6 moves down the road? Because it has a compounding effect. If you just by changing your trend, a handful of percentage points, usually in the first year or two, there's a big reset. It's a 10, 20, 30% reset. But then you're changing the increase or decrease trends over time, and it adds up to very significant money over time. That's the real opportunity. Pharmacy benefit management and this, understanding the vertical integration of the carriers is just one component. There are several others that are very low-hanging fruit to be able to drive even larger returns and better benefits for your employees. So until next time, I hope this was helpful, that you're able to use this tip to add more profitability to your bottom line, more money into your employees' paychecks. Take care.